Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths. Bible or not Bible? If you answer the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verses 5 and 6, you get an extra point for good effort and scripture recall, which may get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks, but if you haven't, have at least $5 too. Well, my name is Major Mike Webb, a fringe independent candidate for U.S. Congress in the Congressional District with the least percentage of persons affiliated with any religious faith at all, and where the incumbent is so assured re-election that he not only joined the Atheist Club in Congress after receiving over 76% of the vote in the last election, but also started appearing on interview shows where the sponsors boast about being not afraid to burn in hell. And he had even felt so emboldened as to press the envelope and declare his pride as 4 children who had rejected God, church, and religion. And it was a good gamble, because he easily trounced his opponent in the primary, who did not even dare to raise the topic of religion to challenge the incumbent, and he received a whopping 77.58% in reward of the primary vote. When you're a fringe independent candidate and not a serious option candidate for Congress, perhaps you enjoy a little more freedom, because it's probably not going to cost you an election. The odds say you can never win. It is what it is. So let's return to the parable of the 10 talents. Just a total of 16 verses in the 20th chapter of the Synoptic Gospel of Matthew, the text collector. But there is quite a lot packed in those 16 verses for exegetical analyses, and for those engaged in fides quaerens intellectum, or faith-seeking understanding, a phrase most often associated with Thomas Aquinas and Anselm. And you may notice that in these Bible study videos, we tend to employ quite a few of these scholarly words and descriptions that are often employed by theologians and seminarians, who generally are not found sitting in pews or standing in pulpits preaching on any given Sunday, for that matter, in an attempt to build our religious vocabulary. And so when you go out to commune in fellowship with your like-minded friends, they can hear you sounding like some erudite academician, a regular Tony Fauci, but doctor of ontology, like some erudite academician. The words that may even be familiar to your philosopher friends, because it is a branch of metaphysics and dealing with relations and nature of being, the great existential questions regarding those things that may be said to have an existence, live or memorized. So what, might you ask, in a discussion about the 10 talents of the New Testament, might we go back to the Proverbs attributed to wise King Solomon in the Old Testament? Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths. Good message from pandemic, where churches declare themselves non-essential. Well, your typical sermon focuses on the antagonist, or the bad guy in the story. Servant who had been given only 1 talent, and an equitable distribution afforded to each according to his ability. And most of us kind of like this sermon because it gives us a sense of perhaps false security and superiority, that we would never be that guy. But to some extent, if Jesus took the time in His ministry to talk to His followers about the guy who failed somebody, and probably far more than the spread in the 10 talents narrative are exactly that guy. It just might be you. And it's an interesting twist on the popular notion of noblesse oblige, that from those who are blessed with much, much is expected. This story seems to suggest that the person with the least ability has a rather awesome responsibility to do just as well, if not more, than the other guys with the most ability. Have to work harder, commensurate. Wealth persons don't have to do to avoid these gnashing of teeth. And I was reminded of that when I saw that verse from Proverbs on the bulletin board of a church that had been closed throughout the pandemic because they had believed that they had to do exactly what Dr. Fauci said, or what Dr. Oldham said, recognize that they were not men of science, and perhaps having a little naive trust, forgetting that they had been sent as sheep amongst the wolves, were advised, therefore, to be wise as a serpent, even while still gentle as a lamb. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Not trust in Dr. Fauci with all your heart. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. Seeking first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all those things shall be added unto you. But at least for now, we are not going to browbeat the wicked and slothful servant, because there is no sense in beating a dead horse to death. But rather, take a look at these servants who had been given 2 talents and 5 talents, respectively, in whom their master had been pleased and had granted favor in the end, rejoicing in their use of their several abilities to return his talents with usury, as he had expected them to do, but probably not even reasonably expected from the servant who had been given only 1, with the least ability to do anything to do with it. But trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, he shall direct your path. Let's review the verses. For the kingdom of heaven is a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. We hear that word like, which is a signal that this is not a metaphor, but a simile. Kingdom of heaven is like this master going away from his servants for a while. And we should have developed a good threat picture from these intimidating words by now, especially if you watched the last video. And if not, remember to hit subscribe. Continuing on, according to the story, unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1. But there is this very intriguing proviso that adds a nuanced understanding of this very familiar story that follows to every man according to his several ability. And straight away to the journey. Kingdom of heaven out of Dodge. Elvis has left the building. And as discussed in the last video, most often, even purportedly religious folks will get lost in the discussion about talents. But that was simply a monetary means of exchange. And in the parable, the story is very clear that the master had given these financial blessings, money, not to any one created in equal ability, but rather to every man according to his several ability. To every man according to his several ability. And didn't get a living wage. And the story continues. After a long time, the Lord of those servants cometh and reckoneth with them, and so he that had received 5 talents, and brought other 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliverest me unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained beside them 5 talents more. His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. And enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. He also that had received 2 talents came and said, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 2 talents. Behold, I have gained 2 other talents beside them. And his Lord said unto him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. And this time we're going to dwell right here, where most people think they are, rather than chasing down that guy, grabbing him by the nose and giving him a swift kick in the rear. It's been done. Make like an ice princess and let it go already. And let's just focus on these 2 blessed servants, with whom the master said he was very well pleased. And like them, you too probably feel pretty snug and self-assured in your goodness and virtue. So let's take a little time to apply a little evolutionary pressure to rock that faith just a smidgen, because no sermon, at least that I have ever heard, has gone quite that way. But it all has to do with this very simple idea of an equitable distribution afforded to each according to his several ability. And as we see, the super stud who received 5 talents only doubled his investment in the end, and then got added 1 when the wicked and slothful servant washed out. But proportionally, the servant who had received only 2 talents also had doubled his investment, just as good as the servant who had received only 5 talents. And if the servant with 1 may have had some challenges which with which to contend. Certainly the guy who received only twice as much would face some of the same challenges. But he was not even eligible for compensation awarded to the servant who had been given 5, returned 10, and received 1 back to keep for himself. No, that's what happened. He got to keep that money for himself. Think about what happened. Every servant had to give the master his money back upon the return of this simile kingdom of heaven. Weren't able to keep it. Whether they had received only 1 talent, 2 talents, or 5 talents, because ultimately it was not theirs, but the money belonging to the kingdom of heaven. Can't take it with you. And the one with the least ability practically set up a failure from the very beginning, just washed out. Like a science, practically. And his talents were given to the servant with the one with the most ability and reward, which doesn't exactly sound like a meritocracy or an equitable outcome at all. Did somebody end up with a short end of the stick when the kingdom of heaven returned? Besides, of course, the infamously notorious wicked and sorrowful servant cast into outer darkness, where there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. How do we reconcile these adverse outcomes? And if you take the vaccine, I might posit that if in the illustration the master is the kingdom of heaven, hey, if you have breakthrough infections, and Dr. Fauci can say that they're wonderful, amazing vaccines that are doing well, then just deal with it. But if the kingdom, the master is the kingdom of heaven, then the 3 servants would have to be those of us here on earth, under his rule. And if even the one with the most ability can do no better than the other with less, there must be some limit to what we can achieve with these monetary gifts on the exchanges, even with the best investment decisions. So pray the alcoholic serenity prayer and recognize there are some things that you can change, some things that you cannot, and pray for that greater discernment to know the difference between the two, a discernment that many of us just simply do not have. Virus is the most abundant biological part of the world, and before a novel coronavirus went on a rampage, there were only 219 harmful to mankind. Do the math. And in the ultimate end, when the kingdom of heaven returns to its servants, since it is the kingdom of heaven who has the authority of jurisdiction to mete out punishment and reward, you are not in charge, even if you think you are, and don't make the rules, and exist subservient, subordinate to those constraints. It is what it is. Sometimes it just be like that, bro, and as they say, you look like an intelligent person. This briefing is unclassified. As you were, my name is Major Mike Webb, and by God, I am running for U.S. Congress. This year, make the right choice, and we shall make America great again. Honest. Carry on.
This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.